This is the build video for the MillRight Carve King 2 CNC machine. So first step that we're going to be working on is the building the bed and frame section. So you're going to need your 2 frame pieces, and you're going to need your 593 millimeter extrusions. You only need 4 of these. They're packed in 2 packages of 3. So we'll take those apart in a second. And then you need the bag of number 10 by 1 self-drilling screws, because we're gonna need a few of those. 5/16 inch socket, and then some oil to lubricate the self-tapping screws as we are putting them into the extrusions. All right, so first step, we're gonna go ahead and open up these. All right, for your layout, you're gonna set the rails that have the small channel to the outside of the machine. So the small channel, you're gonna have 2 of them facing me, and then the 2 on the other side, that small channel is going to be facing out away. And you can check your orientation by taking out one of your T-tracks, and you'll see that the holes on the T-track will line up with the channels in your extrusion bed. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to start attaching our frame to the extrusion piece, the extrusion rails. And it does recommend lubricating these because it is going to be into a piece of metal that is not threaded. Once you do get these started, they go in fairly easy. And I am just going to leave these a little bit loose so they have some play in it, so I can make sure that everything is lined up before I tighten them down. All right, once you get one side of your frame completed, you're going to make sure you leave those loose. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to need the small drop-in T-nuts. They look like this. And then you're going to need the M5 by 8 button cap screws and a 3 millimeter Allen wrench. So what you're going to do is you're also going to be needing your T-track. So first thing you'll do is you will take your drop-in T-nuts, and you're going to notice that one side is rounded and one side is flat. So you have your flat side and you have your rounded side. The picture shows that the end that has the screw hole compared to the end that's a little bit longer, the end with the screw hole is going to go in the track first. You're going to slide that in. And your first T-track is going to go all the way against the frame. So I'm going to slide that T-nut down to the bottom, and we're going to do that with our other 3 extrusion rails as well. All right, and then the next thing you'll do is you'll take your T-track and you'll take your button cap screws, and you'll go ahead and start lining up your track and thread your screws. And you will want to leave these loose as well. It states that in the directions. Leave those loose until you get everything lined up. So once you have those, again, you'll just leave those loose. You're going to slide that T-track all the way over to the edge of the frame. Once you have your T-track closest to the frame, next thing you're going to do is install the drop-in T-nuts, and still going to be putting those in the same way. It's not as important this round, but still just going to be keeping them the same way until we get to our very last T-track. So we're going to go T-track, MDF, T-track, MDF, and alternate until we fill up our bed. So I found it easier to move my MDF over to my T-track, and I'll show you up on this one. And so what I'm gonna do is move this down just a little bit so I can see where that needs to go and line up all my screws. My screw holes there. So it'll just be much easier to get that lined up. You're going to need a split lock washer and the M5x16 machine screws. Again, and your split lock washers for your MDF. The button cap screws will only be for our T-track. You'll also need a screwdriver for this portion. And again, the directions say to leave these loose. All right, got those in there loose. Gonna make sure that that's up against that T-track. And then we're gonna put in our next round of T-nuts. And we will get our next T-track out. Again, here you'll go back to the button cap screws and slide that down. Your next section of MDF. Alright, so we have the last MDF piece, and the last thing is our T-track. It's the last one that will go. So the difference here is when you put in these drop T-nuts, this time you're going to put it in with the hole closest to this frame, where the rest of them were put in with the hole closest to this side. And you want to do that because that will allow the T-track to get as close as possible to the frame on the opposite side. Again, it mentions in the instructions multiple times you want to leave everything loose at this point. Do not tighten anything up yet. And once you have that, slide it up. The next step will be to go ahead and mount your frame on either end here with your self-tapping screws that you lubricate, because they will be self-tapping and they'll go in easier. At this point also, you should have extra of the button screws, the drop T-nuts, the machine screws. You should have extras of those, so we're going to put those away to save for later. All right, once you have that part done, you have your bed complete. Again, leaving everything loose, all screws and bolts are loose at this point. Our next step is going to be to install our Y-rails. You're gonna need your self-tapping screws or self-drilling screws, your socket oil to lubricate the screws, and then your 593 millimeter extrusion rails. So these rails are going to go on the top bracket here, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that your groove is facing in to the CNC machine, and then you have the groove with the rail on top. So that is going to go in just like this, and we'll get a couple screws to get that started on each side. And you will notice when you put this in, if you have it correctly, the channel that is here on the extrusion rail is facing in the CNC machine. It will line up with the groove that is on the side of the frame as well. You'll not want to tighten these all of the way. You want to leave everything still loose. To install this side, you're going to do just the opposite. So railing is still going to be up to the top with the groove. This time your inner groove is going to be facing inside this machine. So the side that you'll see here will be completely flat, and then we'll get our screws set and put in place for this rail. And now we have our rails Y rails put in. Next step is going to be to tighten everything on the frame, then tighten your MDF and your T-track screws. So we're going to tighten everything up. Once you have everything tightened up, you can tell that it is very sturdy, and you're ready to set this part aside to get ready for the next step. All right, for your next step, we're going to be working on the gantry end plate assembly. So you will need your plate kit. And if you open that up, you'll have two of the plate kits, or two of the plates that you'll take out. Next thing you'll need is the anti-backlash nuts, pillow bearing blocks, your V-wheel kit, your motors, because we're going to use one of those in a minute, M3 by 16 machine screws, M5 by 10 machine screws, and M5 by 16 machine screws.
For the next step, we're going to need to install
we're going to open up our V-wheel kit and get that all set out, because we're going to need to have all of those
So there are
pieces
4 loose bearings.
access.
We're going to go ahead and use those. And what you will do is you're going to press 2 bearings into the V-wheel like this, with 1 washer in between to make yourself a bearing.
So I'm going to show you how it recommends to install that. So it recommends a flat piece of wood. You're going to put your V-wheel on it, and then you're going to set your bearing on top. So it will look like that. Put that on a flat surface. Take another piece of wood, and then use your body weight to push that bearing in. You should be able to feel it slide in. What you're going to do next is you're going to take a washer that comes in the kit, and it says it's an M5 washer. This was in the V-wheel kit. It's not labeled. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a washer out of that bag. You're going to take it and put it inside of the bearing wheel, or the V-wheel, like that. You're going to line it up. Put another bearing on top. And then push it down until it seats itself. You're going to do that twice. So you should have 2 bearings, or 2 V-wheels with 2 bearings on each side. All right, next thing you're going to do is you're going to take this top plate here. You're going to have 2 of the eccentric spacers. They are tapered on the end. You're going to take that tapered part and stick in the 2 holes that are here on your plate. And you're going to get 2 of the longer screws. These are the 30 millimeter. And you're going to feed it through your V-wheel, and then through your spacer, and then you're going to use one of the nuts that is provided, and you'll run it through just like that, and then tighten it up. And your V-wheel should turn. You'll do the same thing with your other V-wheel. You want to leave these snug. Next thing you'll do is take one of your pillow block bearings. You're going to install it on the same plate. It will go here, and you will use 2 of the 5 by 10 machine screws. And your plate will look like that. Next thing you're going to do is flip this plate. And the next thing we're going to work on is installing the anti-backlash nut. You're going to use your grub screw. In the instructions it says using a 3 millimeter hex key, but it is actually a 2.5 millimeter hex key to install that in there. So we're just going to run that in. You're going to stop tightening that grub screw when it touches the plate, which I'll show you close up. So I'm going to tighten until it touches that plate, and then I'm going to stop there. So next thing you're going to do is you are going to cap the grub screw with the jam nut. Jam nut is going to go on the end of the screw just like that. You're going to secure the anti-backlash nut with 2 of the 5x16 machine screws. Then we're done with that step. All right, next up is we're gonna go ahead and open up the rest of these bearings, and we're gonna go ahead and press the bearings in all of the V-wheels. Remember, it will be a bearing, press in with your body weight. It'll sit flush, and then you will take one of your washers from the V-wheel kit, put in, and then you will take your next bearing. Lay it flat. Push it down with your body weight, and you'll have your next bearing. All right, after you have all of those V-wheels bearings pressed, you're gonna be working with the motor side gantry plate. You're gonna need 2 of the eccentric spacers again. You're gonna place them in these holes here with the tapered side facing down. You'll have your V-wheels on either side with your 30mm screws. Again, those will be the long ones, so we'll need 2 of those. And we'll need 2 of the nuts that came in the V-wheel kit. Feed it through and tighten your nuts on the back side. And should look like that. All right, next thing you're gonna need to do is get one of the motors. They all say motor A on the bottom, so you'll get one of the motors. You'll need one of the mounting plates. There's 2 of them in there, and then you'll need one of the 4 couplers. So on the coupler, you'll notice that one end is smaller than the other. You're gonna put the small end down, so the big end is up top. And how they want you to mount this is using this plate for a spacer. So pull that coupler up, slide the plate under it, pressing it down like that. Then you're going to tighten the 2 hex screws with this spacer there, the plate as the spacer. That's gonna be the distance of that coupler that will go up. So I'm gonna tighten that, and it's gonna be with a 2.5mm hex key. All right, once you have that tightened, you can slide your plate spacer out, and it'll be ready to mount with your motor. So you're gonna flip this motor plate over, the side that we just mounted the V-wheels on. You're gonna flip that over. To mount our motor, we're going to stick it through our plate. And if you're looking at the motor, or if you're looking at this plate, you want the wire coming out to the side that has the cutout. Your motor wire will come out to this side right here. And we're gonna go ahead and get this mounted, and you will screw this in with 4 of your M3x16 screws. All right, so once you get that motor installed to the plate, you should have your wire coming out that looks like this. So again, if you're looking at the plate, it'll come out the left side where the indentation is made. Next thing we're gonna do is install one of these anti-backlash nuts. And the first thing we need to do again is install this little screw with our Allen wrench. So that will look like tightening it until it touches and closes that gap. On one of the little nuts that comes with it there. Again, you're gonna use the 2 pre-threaded holes that are on this motor mount. You're going to install it on the side that the motor is on. And this one is going to have the groove facing up towards the motor. And you're gonna use the M5x16 screws. And we're done with that step. So you should see something that looks like this. All right, next thing you're going to do is you're gonna need your X plate. Looks like this. Has the channels on two sides. So you need the notch. Show you there. You need the notch facing up and away, flat side up. You'll also need this little end plate here. You can see it has the notch in the top. You need your V-wheels, and this time we're going to use the spacers, the regular spacers. And so these are the little ones that do not have any of the tapered ends on them. And you're going to use the, in the direction that says the M5 by 25 machine screws. Those are going to be the screws that come with the V-wheel kit, and these are going to be the shorter ones out of the two. So you take your V-wheel, take your screw, run it through. You'll have to line up the washer. You'll take your spacer, and then you will put that in. And you're going to repeat that process for the 4 holes on the sides. All right, and next thing you're going to do is install the anti-backlash nut. We've already put the grub screw and the little nut on top, so it's ready to go. And you're going to place this on with the groove pointing to the left and pointing up. You're going to install that with 2 of the M5 by 16 screws. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to install some V-wheels in the 4 holes. With these holes, again, since they are bigger and not threaded, you're going to use the eccentric spacers. That's the part that has the little tapered end on it. The tapered end is going to go down into the plate. It should fit in the hole. So when you do, though, the next step is this time you're actually going to run, this is one of the 30mm screws. It is the longest screw that comes in the V-wheel kit. You're going to run that in through the bottom. But you'll need your screwdriver to push it up. You'll run it through the bottom, up just like that. Your V-wheel will go on top there, and then the nut will go on top. So you'll be looking at something like that. And then you'll need one of the nylon nuts, and you'll attach that. So when you do that, this is what you will be looking at. Through there is, you'll have your screw through there. The nut will be on top, and we're gonna do that same thing on the other 3. All right, next thing we're gonna do is attach this little plastic plate, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it is this little plastic piece, and you'll notice one side has like a little recessed hole. In the directions, it just shows that recessed hole facing up, along with the flat sides facing up, or the flat edges, corners, and then the rounded corners facing down. So we're going to install that just like it shows in the picture. And we're going to use 2 of the M5 by 12 button cap screws, and then 2 of the M5 by 10 locking nuts. You'll have it that will look like that. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to attach this end plate to the bottom of your plate here, and we're going to do it on the side that does not have the notch. And the way it goes is it will go just like this.
This is an error. The plastic rectangle piece actually needs to go on the inside of the plate, not on the outside.
All right, when you install this plate here, the plastic tab with the little recess will go on the inside. You'll have your button screws flush with the bottom, and then your nut will be on the inside here. So we're gonna get that mounted. We're gonna use our number 10 by 1 self-tapping screws. Put a little oil on them. Next thing you're gonna need is a long wire motor. So that's one of the motors that has the most cord bunched up with it. You're gonna have that cord facing away from you. You're gonna need one of the little spacers. That's gonna go on top of the motor. And then you're gonna need the plate that looks just like this. You're gonna notice one side has kind of like a little indentation in it. that side is gonna go down, and you're gonna put it on with the flat side facing the wire. The two kind of beveled sides or cut sides, that's gonna be facing you, and you're gonna attach that with 4 of the M3 by 16 screws. Once finished, you'll have something that looks like that. All right, the next step is we're going to install one of these drag chain posts. It is the black tube that has holes on either side. We're gonna be putting it in the bracket here. That is on the flat side. So the screw is actually going to go on the side that the motor post is sticking out. The drag chain, or the drag chain bracket is going to go next to the motor. When you have that attached, you'll have something that looks like that. All right, next thing you're going to do is you're going to have your Z plate out, and we are going to be attaching 6 of the V wheels into the large holes, and we're going to use the eccentric spacers with the tapered side going down into the plate like we have the other ones, and then we're going to be attaching those with the 30mm screws, which are the long ones, and then using your locking nuts on the back. So we're going to go ahead and get those 6 installed. You're going to thread your screw through the V wheel, then through the spacer, through the plate, and you'll put your nuts on the back side. All right, once you have that all put together, you should end up with something that looks like that. That will also end up using the rest of those eccentric spacers, the locking nuts, and the 30mm screws. All right, next thing you'll need is another of the anti-backlash nuts, the little mounting bracket, and you're going to need 2 of the M5 locking nuts. These are bagged separately from the V wheel installation, and what you're going to do is on this back lash plate, this black one, you're going to see one side has round holes, the other side has more of a hexagonal hole. I'm going to put the locking nuts in those with the locking part side up, and you'll press those in. Mine are a little tight, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a flat board and press those in. All right, next thing you're going to do is you're going to attach the plate and the anti-backing nut that you've put the lock nuts in, and the gap opening is going to point to the left, and it's going to go on just like that. You'll run your M525, which there's 2 of those. You'll run those through, and it will look like that. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the router mount. It has all of the hardware already installed. You are going to need to take the 2 top screws out with your Allen wrench. So how this will go on is the opening of the router mount will face to the right, and you'll put this on to line up with those 2 holes of where that hardware came out, and you'll put your lock washer and then your screw back in. We'll have that looks just like that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get this plate back out. We're going to have the groove at the top, and we are going to slide this plate with the router mount down into the groove, and you want to make sure that the wheels have some pressure going in. And so what you may have to do is take your 10mm wrench and adjust the eccentric spacers, and you can see how these are, and they're kind of offset a little bit, and you can turn it to give yourself some different width. So I'm going to adjust those to where it slides in with a little bit of pressure, but I can slide it up and down with my hand to move it. So it says that the wheels should all make firm contact. I feel like that's pretty good there. I can move it with hand pressure. They are firm. So I think we're going to go with that where I can slide it up and down. Next thing it says to do is take your 178 millimeter lead screw, and you're going to thread it through the backlash nut, which is right in here. And it will sit down in your little plastic piece here. And you're gonna thread that down and make sure it lines up so it touches. All right, next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna get one of your couplers and you're gonna put it on the lead screw. The big side is gonna go down. You're just gonna leave that loose for right now. And actually I'm gonna make sure that it is loosened up all the way to fit down as much as it needs to. Gonna put that on there. And then we're gonna take our motor mount and set on top of our coupler. And then what you're going to do, and so wire is going to be facing out. Next thing you're going to do is you are going to use 2 of your self-drilling screws. We're going to oil those and get one put in each hole there to get that tightened up. All right, we have that part tightened. Those bolts are in. One thing it says next is to make sure this lead screw is down here all the way touching that plate, because if it's not, your height will not work correctly. So we're gonna thread that down just with our hand and make sure that that is touching in that plastic little plate. All right, and I've turned that as much as I can because now it's raising this up and down. So that is touching just like it should. And now it's time for us to tighten our coupler. One thing I would suggest is I should have put this much further down to the bottom, so I had made sure I had enough room to work with the coupler up at the top. So now we're gonna tighten that coupler with our 2.5 hex key. All right, one thing I did have to do is I had to loosen these bolts back up to let the motor come up just a little bit to slide this coupler all the way down on the lead screw. And you'll notice there should be a gap. When I was first doing this, this coupler was up to the motor. You do have to slide that coupler down, making sure that it stays together. You should have a gap here. And now I'm gonna tighten both of those to make sure that that coupler is set. All right, and now we're done with this step.